Hello and welcome back to OpShin Pioneer Program Week 3, Lecture 4. And we are in fact not yet deploying the contract, but we are first looking at a concept called parameterization of contracts. So what we've looked at before was the vesting contract, which takes three arguments: the datum, the redeemer, and the context. And essentially, by specifying the datum when you send funds to the contract and you attach datum, and this datum is in a way parameterizing or telling the contract who is able to unlock this the funds. Now, what's also possible is that this is not actually done during usage of the contract, but you can already specify these parameters at compile time. So what you can do is when you build the smart contract, you already specify, okay, all the funds, regardless of which datum is attached, all the funds that go to this contract could only be unlocked by a specific person after a specific time. And that's, in a sense, hard coding these parameters. Sometimes you want to hard code parameters that can be part of the vesting, that could be also supplied by datum. But for minting contracts, for example, we have to parameterize them because there is no datum for minting. There's just the redeemer. So let's have a look at how this would look when writing such a contract. It's actually relatively straightforward. Previously, we had a single validator function with 3 arguments, which is the datum, redeemer, and context, and the datum was given after compiling when locking funds. And now we just have 4 arguments. The first argument being parameters, and then datum, redeemer, and context. And what this is telling the OpShin, because it knows that spending contracts should have 3 arguments, it knows that the first argument, this params argument, actually needs to be provided during compile time. So this is a bit non-Pythonic, but this is a bit from the functional world, where if you have a 4-parameter function, you apply 1 parameter to it, you don't get an error that 3 parameters are missing, but instead you get a 3-parameter function, and then you can supply the remaining 3 parameters as you wish. And that's what we are doing here. We define a validator that takes 4 arguments, and then at compile time we add the first argument. So what we get is a new function that has only 3. The remaining 3 arguments would get datum, redeemer, and context, and we basically we don't need to re-specify any of them when we then deploy the smart contract. And the rest of the logic is exactly the same as before, because we have just chosen to keep the parameter type the same. So why would you want to do this versus having it specified in the datum? So one thing is that this, if you provide a parameter at compile time, necessarily the hash of your contract will change, because now during compilation you provided extra data and the contract looks different, the hash looks different. This can lead to, this will necessarily lead to a new address or policy ID of your contract, and thus it will be not so easy to discover actually your contract. So the benefit of the previous, I have also quickly mentioned this, if you have the same contract and you just parameterize by the datum, then you can just look at this contract address on like a chain explorer, and all the outputs at this address, adhere to some format, and you will then be able to spend them according to specified rules. But if you change at compilation time the parameters, then all the contract addresses are different, and it's actually not so easy to predict what will be the hash. So actually, it's harder for a third party or for anyone to really analyze, okay, what are all the contracts that I'm looking at or I have to look at. This can also be good because you maybe want to separate, okay, these are all the funds that are specified for this person, these are all the funds that are specified for this person, and they should be at different addresses, so you don't have to mix them up. But this can also be confusing and or difficult for batchers or analyzers to actually find all the funds. So you have to think about what applies to your use case. Do you want to strictly separate, or do you want to have a single contract that handles everything and then it's more transparently accessible to the outside? Then for this, then you can think about, okay, are there values that are maybe more of a constant than of an actual parameter to the contract? So you may think about this as, imagine you have the pool in a decentralized exchange, and there is a fee that this pool takes of every trade. Now you have two choices: either you hard code the fee into the contract, or you provide the fee as kind of the pool state. And the upside of providing it as a parameter is that you can later on actually change this parameter, right? By just changing the datum. However, this makes the datum a bit larger because now you have an additional integer in the datum. And if you want to really minimize the size of the contract, of the pool datum, then you may want to actually hard code it in the contract and provide it during compilation. Then the script gets a bit bigger, but as we have seen with the reference inputs, it's not so much of a problem because it's not part of the inputs outputs. And yeah, so there's this, if you hard code the value at compilation time, it may be more efficient. You can also apply additional compiler optimizations on top of this, but you cannot vary the variable in the deployed version. You have to deploy a new smart contract to use. So yeah, there's a trade-off for this as well. Now, of course, there can be a spectrum as well. For example, here we have several fields in the vesting parameters, beneficiary and the deadline. And what you can try as a small assignment is to keep the deadline, but make the beneficiary modifiable in the datum. So, or the other way around, keep the beneficiary fixed as a parameter to the contract, and then only supply the datum as a state of the output. And essentially this will give you, for example, a single address with many different UTXOs at it. All of these belong to the same beneficiary, which you have specified as a script parameter, but they can have different integers for the datum at which they are unlocked. So, for example, one person can easily see, oh, all these funds belong to me, but I can only unlock them after some time. So yeah, if you want to dive a bit deeper into this, feel free to play around there. And see you in the next lecture.